I chose to read Hatchet by Gary Paulson. And one of the main reasons that I actually chose this book is because we've talked a lot about how it's a lot harder to get boys interested in reading in the classroom. And so this is a book a lot about wilderness, and so I thought it would be an interesting book for those male students who are having a lot harder time getting interested in reading. And so this book is centered around a 13-year-old named Brian, and he has been sent to spend the summer with his father in Canada after his parents have had this tragic divorce. And Brian knows a secret about his mother and the reason why the divorce has happened. And so he's kind of determined that he's going to tell his dad, what's going on. But he's not 100% sure. And so his mom sends him to go stay with his dad for the summer. And this is just a month or so after the divorce. And she sends him with a hatchet, and he leaves on a plane with a pilot. Well, as this plane and the pilot are heading to go to Brian's dad, the pilot has a heart attack and dies on the plane. And so Brian is left completely alone on the plane, which is kind of ironic because Brian is already feeling very alone because of what's going on in his family. So he has that kind of internal loneliness, and then now there's this external loneliness that is happening as a result of this accident. And so Brian learns to kind of steer the plane, and he crashes, and he is left basically like by this lake in the wilderness completely alone. He doesn't have anybody. He survives the crash, but the pilot's dead from the heart attack, and he is kind of forced to deal with this loneliness and this isolation, and he develops these survival skills, which are both internal survival skills because of the things that have happened with his family, and then external because of the situation that he's currently in, and he is in the wilderness by himself, trying to find food, trying to provide shelter, get a fire, just daily survival things. And so it seems like Brian has these insurmountable obstacles, but really he is learning to face these challenges and overcome the obstacles in a very unique and powerful way. And so I'm going to read an excerpt, and this is pretty soon after Brian has crashed and he's in the wilderness alone, and he's feeling very isolated, very lonely. He's pretty depressed. He doesn't really know how he's going to be able to do this, and this passage is probably the first passage of transformation in his way of thinking, and him saying, I think that I can actually do this, and I'm going to. The trouble, Brian thought, looking around, was that all he could see was grass and brush. There was nothing obvious to eat, and aside from about 1 million birds and the beaver, he hadn't seen animals to trap and cook. And even if he had got one somehow, he didn't have any matches, so he couldn't have a fire. Nothing. It kept coming back to him. He had nothing. Well, almost nothing. As a matter of fact, he thought, I don't know what I've got or haven't got. Maybe I should try and figure out just how I stand. It will give me something to do, keep me from thinking of food, until they come find me. Brian had once had an English teacher, a guy named Perpich, who was always talking about being positive, thinking positive, staying on top of things. That's how Perpich had put it. Stay positive and stay on top of things. Brian thought of him now, wondered how to stay positive and stay on top of this. All Perpich would say is that I have to get motivated. He was always telling kids to get motivated. Brian changed position, so he was sitting on his knees. He reached into his pockets and took out everything he had and laid it on the grass in front of him. It was pitiful enough. A quarter, 3 dimes, a nickel, and 2 pennies. A fingernail clipper, a billfold with a $20 bill, in case you get stranded at the airport in some small town and have to buy food, his mother had said, and some odd pieces of paper. And on his belt, somehow still there, the hatchet his mother had given him. He had forgotten it, and now reached around and took it out and put it in the grass. There was a touch of rust already forming on the cutting edge of the blade, and he rubbed it off with his thumb. That was it. He frowned. No, wait. If he was going to play the game, might as well play it right. Perpich would tell him to quit messing around. Get motivated. Look at all of it, Brian. He had on a pair of good tennis shoes, now almost dry, and socks, and jeans, and underwear, and a thin leather belt, and a t-shirt with a windbreaker so torn it hung on him in tatters, and a watch. He had a digital watch still on his wrist, but it was broken from the crash. The little screen blank, and he took it off and almost threw it away, but stopped the hand motion and lay the watch on the grass with the rest of it. There. That was it. No, wait. One other thing. Those were all of the things he had, but he also had himself. Perpich used to drum that into them. You are your most valuable asset. Don't forget that. You are the best thing you have. Brian looked around again. I wish you were here, Perpich. I'm hungry, and I'd trade everything I have for a hamburger. This book has received a lot of awards. It's received the 1987 Newbery Medal, William Allen White Children's Book Award in 1990, Georgia Children's Book Award in 1991, Adolescent to Young Adult ALA Notable Book in 1987, Book List Editor's Choice Citation in 1988, Dorothy Canfield Fisher Children's Book Award in 1989, and then Young Hoosier Book Award in 1991. So it's a pretty well-known book. And an extension activity for this is I would really like my students to do a literary analysis on this novel because there's so much dual meaning, and Brian is growing internally and he's growing externally. And it's almost as if the wilderness and the place he is in is an outward manifestation of the way that he's feeling internally. And I think that that is such a powerful thought to reflect on for my students. And I think that this novel, for this young of an age, actually has a lot more literary analysis that can be applied to it than most novels do in this kind of age. And so I would definitely want my students to work on that and to note symbols and themes and just different metaphors, tracking them throughout the novel, and then to see the progression of Brian from the beginning of the novel to the end and to see the kind of conclusions, just because I think it's a really, really powerful book about overcoming obstacles and challenges and struggles, and Brian does this so well that I think that it would be a very, very beneficial book for my students. I would say this is probably 5th through 8th grade, maybe most effective in a 6th or 7th grade classroom. So maybe it would be at the lower end of the grades that I will be teaching, but I still think that it's powerful and it can be used even in some higher grades, especially if there are struggling readers or male students who are really having a hard time getting involved in the reading. I think this could be a valuable book to use, and I definitely would recommend this book.